Good morning, church. It is Holy Humor Sunday, and I hope that everyone is doing well. I found a story that I want to tell you, and it is a story from the Middle Ages about a pope and a rabbi, and I loved this story, and then I got to thinking, oh no, what happens if this story isn't good for telling because it might offend somebody? So I did what I always do in these instances. I called my friend Rabbi Abby Jacobson, and I told her my concerns, and then I started to tell this story, and she began laughing even before I got to any of the funny parts. It turns out she tells this same story all the time and insists that it was written by a rabbi. So, here it goes. It seems that the Pope, under pressure from all the cardinals, decided that all the Jews had to leave Rome because there were too many of them. Naturally, there was a big uproar in the Jewish community, so the Pope made a deal. He would have a religious debate with a member of the Jewish community, and if the Jew won, they could stay. But if the Pope won, the Jews would have to leave. Now, the Jews realized they had no choice in this, so the elders, they picked their most respected rabbi to represent them, but there was a problem. The rabbi only spoke Hebrew, and the Pope only spoke Latin and Italian. So because of this, the rabbi, being a rather flamboyant in his expression, asked for one detail to the debate. It had to be done in silence. No one could talk. And the Pope agreed. So the day of the debate came, and the rabbi and the Pope, they sat opposite each other for a full minute before the Pope raised his hand with 3 fingers. And the rabbi looked right back at him and raised his hand with 1 finger. The Pope waved his finger around a circle around his head, and the rabbi energetically pointed to the ground. So the Pope pulled out a loaf of bread and a glass of wine, and he broke the bread and he ate and he sipped from the wine. So the rabbi pulls out an apple and he takes a bite. And the Pope stands up. I give up. This man is too good. The Jews can stay in Rome as long as they want. About an hour later, the cardinals were all around the Pope asking him, what happened? And the Pope said, well, first I held up 3 fingers to represent the Trinity. But he responded by holding up 1 finger, reminding me that there was still one God common to both our religions. Then I waved my finger around to show that God was all around us and is Lord of the church. And he responded by pointing to the ground, reminding me that God may be all around, but God is also right here and is God of the Jews as well as the church. So I took out bread and drank wine to show him that God absolves us from our sins through the act of communion. And the rabbi took out an apple to remind me of original sin and how it still affects us. He had an answer for everything. What could I do? Meanwhile, over at the Jewish community, they crowded around the rabbi and they said, Rabbi, what happened? He said, well, I'm not sure. First thing he said to me was that the Jews had 3 days to get out of here, and I told him not one of us was leaving. Then he told me that this whole city would be cleared of the Jews, and I told him we were staying right here. And then what happened? Asked a woman. I don't know, said Moshe. He took out his lunch, and I took out mine. So now we can stay. I think that's a great story. I'm sure it never happened. Today is Holy Humor Sunday. On this day, we celebrate the unbridled joy of the good news of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is a tradition extending to some of the earliest Christian theologians who noted that God played a practical joke on the devil by raising Jesus from the dead. Easter was God's supreme joke on death. So traditionally, the Sunday after Easter became a bright Sunday filled with joy and laughter as people played jokes on each other and sang and danced and had fun. Our service this week features a lighthearted feel with a sprinkling of jokes here and there, all geared up to help us experience joy more fully as we worship God together. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed.